Support for this episode comes from Edge Park. Take control of your diabetes with a broad range of diabetes management supplies from Edge Park. The latest diabetes supplies and continuous glucose monitors from top brands simplify blood sugar management. Edge Park accepts most insurance plans, and Medicare and Medicare Advantage cover certain devices. Plus, Edge Park takes care of the insurance paperwork to make ordering as seamless as possible. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Edge Park logo to learn more about Edge Park's diabetes supplies and CGM devices.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, living with type 1 diabetes as a professional athlete is an exercise in intense management and mental stamina. Gary Forbes did it before today's technology and without a diabetes community. He's making up for lost time with that last bit, connecting in a way that he says has changed how he looks at T1D. Of course, we're talking about basketball. As one of only 3 people to ever play in the NBA with type 1, Gary has a very unique perspective and a great message he's getting out in a new comic series. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of the show. I am always so glad to have you here. I'm your host, Stacey Sims, and you know we aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. Now, it is Diabetes Awareness Month, and we're just going to be chugging along here on the podcast. Nothing particular for Diabetes Awareness Month on this side of the microphone. I mean, every month is Diabetes Awareness Month around here. But over on social media, I'm doing something a little different this year, and I'm sharing my experience with Dexcom's Stelo. This is their CGM, although they don't call it a CGM, they call it a glucose biosensor kit that is meant for people who don't dose insulin. Stelo is approved for people with prediabetes and with diabetes who don't use insulin, and for people like me who don't have any type of diabetes but are curious about their blood sugar. I've already shared a couple of posts. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. I might do a podcast episode to wrap it all up. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to just do the one sensor, for 2 weeks or keep it on for a full month. Kind of depends on if you want to learn more. My questions are being answered. It's really interesting, but not in the way that I expected. And I will be sharing more online. But definitely let me know if you have topics, questions, or whatever you want to know about Stelo. Okay, Mom's Night Out Atlanta registration is open. We're going to be in the Atlanta suburbs in late January, the very last weekend of January, first Saturday of February. Early bird special is on for Atlanta. Please don't wait. I get questions every day. I love this. If we're coming to your city, we do have a form over at diabetes-connections.com. Click on the Mom's Night Out tab or the events tab and just sign up for emails there. We will be sending out announcements to that list first, and you'll know exactly where we're going in 2025. 4 locations on the books for 2025. We are waiting for some venue confirmation to firm up some dates, but we'll be getting those city announcements out very soon. I'm so excited. I can't wait to do this again. I've said this before, but podcasting is amazing, but it's kind of lonely. I just sit here in my office. My dog is here. She's great, but you're listening, but we're not together. And I love going to Mom's Night Out events because I get to talk to my peers in the diabetes community. I still need that support from other moms and other women with type 1. And this has been selfishly so rewarding for me. So thank you so much for the support and the amazing turnout for Mom's Night Out. My guest this week is Gary Forbes, part of a very elite group of people to play basketball at the highest level with type 1 diabetes. There have been 2 other guys in the NBA, Adam Morrison and Chris Dudley, and 1 woman, WNBA player Lauren Cox, who live with T1D. I'll let Gary tell his own story, but you should know he was diagnosed in 2004. He was already on track to play professional basketball when that happened, and his father lived with type 1. As we were taping this interview, Gary had just returned from Diabetes Legends, a fantastic event put on by Rob Howe of Diabetics Doing Things. Diabetes Legends is a basketball event. It's like a camp where kids can play basketball, their parents can hang out, and then there's an adult meetup. It's such a great idea. I've known Rob a long time. I think he started his podcast the same time I did back in 2015. But when we talk about Rob, that's who we're talking about. And Rob also played professional basketball, but not in the NBA. He played for the Washington Generals, the team that plays against the Globetrotters. How great is that? Gary Forbes retired from basketball in 2019 And in 2023, he launched a comic book series called The Soul Survivors, which follows the story of superhero children battling conditions like cancer and diabetes. He has got a lot to share. Our interview is coming up right after this. Most people who take insulin have experienced low blood sugar. It can be disorienting and scary. Very low blood sugar is very scary. And that's where Gvoke HypoPen comes in. Gvoke HypoPen is a ready-to-use rescue pen for treating very low blood sugar in people with diabetes ages 2 and above. If you take insulin or sulfonylureas, you are at risk for your blood sugar going too low. Low blood sugar emergencies can happen unexpectedly, and they demand quick action. You need a safety net when it matters most. Be ready to treat very low blood sugar with Gvoke HypoPen. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Gvoke logo. Gvoke shouldn't be used if you have a tumor in the gland on top of your kidneys called pheochromocytoma, or if you have a tumor in your pancreas called insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk for safety information. Gary, welcome to Diabetes Connections. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I'm so excited to talk to you. How are you doing today?
I am excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Truly, truly fortunate and honored to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. I will tell you a little inside baseball, or maybe that's not the right expression to talk to a basketball player, but I rarely listen. Right before I interview somebody, I rarely listen to their recent podcast episodes with other people. I do research. I want to know all about you, but I don't want to get too much in my head about, what other people have asked. But I had to listen to your most recent episode with Rob Howe to find out how the Diabetes Legends event went and what the kids wanted to know. And I will link that episode up. It was just phenomenal. How did you guys meet? How did you and Rob Howe meet? And tell me a little bit about the Legends event. And I know we'll get to all of you and your background and everything, but I'm just curious about that.
So Rob started the Diabetics Legends or Diabetes Legends and his podcast. I want to say it was in 2017 when he started the Diabetics Doing Things, podcast and his whole company. And he reached out to me via DM to, let me know that I was kind of an inspiration to him during his time when he was coming up in college and I was playing in the NBA. And there was a story about me in the Denver newspaper about being a type 1 diabetic and, overcoming all these different obstacles. And it was kind of something that motivated him and shined a light at him. And he was just in high school at the time. So it was something that, resonated with him and, helped him out through his time. And during I think around 2017, it was when I was, kind of searching to become an even better manager of my diabetes. And I seen that he was into this tech world and all these different things, CGMs and pumps. And so it was kind of a great synergy because he helped me out and I helped him out at a time of, need and getting more education behind that. So it was an amazing experience to reconnect with someone, I guess, who I inspired, and now vice versa, he inspired me.
We'll come back to the legends and the kids and what they wanted to know. But for those who are not familiar, let's talk about your diagnosis. You were a young adult, really. I mean, you were still a teenager. But Tell us what happened.
I always tell people, especially in the diabetes community, I feel like I'm a hybrid diabetic because I was able to live out, most of my childhood with not having diabetes. And I was diagnosed after my freshman year at the University of Virginia, 19 years old, just, figuring out college, had a pretty good freshman season. But the diagnosis was a kind of a shock to me. It was something I've never experienced before, although I did watch my father, who was also a diabetic. I watched him handle it very, very well. There was no real talk about diabetes, so there wasn't a fear of it. But being by yourself in college, you're in this new city or new state, no family around, you're by yourself, and to manage, this diagnosis on your own was pretty tough. I was scared. I remember when I was diagnosed, I remember I was 225 pounds after my freshman year. I gained a lot of weight from lifting and taking all the proteins and all the things. And in 1 week, I lost 20 pounds or 26 pounds. So I was back down to the same weight that I went to college with. And it was a scary week to lose all that weight that rapidly. I had the, not typical symptoms, constant urination, thirst. And I thought I had a urinary tract infection at first because I was like, why am I going to the bathroom so much? And I went to school to get tested, and I was actually misdiagnosed. I was diagnosed with type 2 at first, but I do remember when the doctor put me into the office, he closed the shades down and he said, Gary, you may have to, worry about your education more and probably put basketball to the side because you have diabetes. And luckily for me, I'm hard-headed. It went in one ear and went out the next. But I was fortunate to have my father, who never made any kind of difficult challenge, seem like it wasn't something that I could accomplish. I remember going into my dorm room that night. I looked myself in the mirror and I was like, all right, you have diabetes. How do we still figure out making it to the NBA, which was my goal?
Wait, and I should just interrupt as you listen. Your father, Gary, lives with type 1. I mean, when you say diabetes, he had this experience. Was it something you were aware of as a child?
I seen him, take his insulin, syringes, and I see him draw it up, but I never saw my father as, sick or have an illness. It's like, all right, just like my father wakes up and brushes his teeth or drinks his tea, it was something that it was normal, I guess, because he never made it look like it was a challenge. He lift weights and he never asked for empathy. He never had the, oh, woe is me feel bad for me because I have this chronic health condition. And he was big on cliche sayings. And I remember when I was first diagnosed and he told me, it's like, plan A was to get to the NBA. So plan B is to make plan A work all the way to Z. So it doesn't matter as long as we get the job done. So I was very fortunate to have someone in my corner that showed me that diabetes is not a weakness. It's not, don't use it as a crutch, but it could be a springboard to success. So I was able to use that as a chip on my shoulder. I always felt confident because I had type 1 and I'm out there doing the sprints and lifting weights and going to practice 2 a days, 3 a days. So it made me feel good.
All right. I have lots of sports questions for you, or maybe more workout questions. But I do want to ask a little bit more about your dad, because I understand your dad had the cliches and he's inspiring to you and let's go for it. And I'm thrilled that you didn't listen to that doctor. But diabetes is really hard.
It is.
Right. Even though your dad never wanted to show you, and we get that as parents, right? I mean, even if you don't have diabetes or a chronic condition, you don't want to show your kids, woe is me about anything. Is there a moment or a time? I mean, have you guys had a heart to heart about this kind of stuff?
No, we never, we never, yeah. We never had a, sit down. He just made it seem like it was something that it's manageable. I do understand that it is tough for many people across the world to manage and deal with type 1 and type 2. But I was very fortunate to have someone that made it, seem that this is something that I can do. I mean, this is something that I can manage and live with and accomplish my goals no matter the obstacle. And I was also fortunate to have basketball as an external outlet to have me just focus on that. And it put diabetes in a different perspective because I had to make sure that I was eating the right foods, exercising, getting the right amount of sleep to become a really good basketball player. And in hand, that also made me manage my diabetes very well. So they kind of went hand in hand. I always, a cliche that I always that I tell people, it's like, all right, if you're driving a Bentley or a Porsche or a Rolls Royce, what kind of gas would you put in it? Premium. So it's kind of the same thing. I look at the human body as this unbelievable vessel, this machine that putting the right fuel and vital minerals and foods and rest is going to make you become a better human being, in the, grand scheme of things. So I always looked at it that way. And I think being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, I think made me, I feel like it's broadened my perspective on living healthy and managing just my overall health. You only get one of these. You can't trade these in like you do cars. So might as well take care of this one.
So I'm thinking 2004. Did your college team trainers, coaches have any experience? Were they helpful? Were they supportive?
So when I transferred to the University of Massachusetts, where I was like retested and I was diagnosed with type 1 and I was on 2 different types of insulins now. And I was so scared of needles when I was first diagnosed. I remember that when I was diagnosed at UVA, they took me in the office and tried to make me inject myself with saline water just to test and how it feels. And I remember telling the nurse, it's like, I'm not doing that. Do you have a pill? Is there a drink that I can take? Obviously, I'm nervous, scared. I'm by myself. No one is around me, but I'm in college by myself. But I remember the next day that I had to take my insulin. I missed class that first morning, and I made it to practice, but I missed class because I was just sitting at the table, looking at the syringe, looking at the vial. And for a moment there, I was like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not injecting myself with a needle. But I spoke to my father. He was like, yo, you watch me every day do this. This is something easy. It's going to be a small pinch. And, once I was able to get over that hump, it's like, oh, okay, this is kind of easy. All right. And went through the honeymoon phase, but going to University of Massachusetts, I think that was the best thing for me overall because there was a lot of players on my team that was from New York, and we built a family camaraderie. We're still on a group chat till this day, that my same teammates from my time in college, and they didn't make me feel kind of sorry for myself. They would kind of joke on me like, in a way, we're from New York, where, it makes you build tough skin, and it's like, come on, man, like nothing's wrong with you. Like you're good. I mean, obviously they did know, but they wanted me to have a different perspective to not feel bad that I'm, sitting out certain sprints or certain drills because I had to drink a little Gatorade or, eat a bar or something like that. But I never used it. I never took it in a hurtful way. I think it was more so of a challenge. That's how I looked at it, and being able to overcome those challenges and still be out there kind of gave me a better sense or a better feel about myself. And, I liked it.
Yeah. Yeah. The last thing you want is to be left out of that kind of joking around and ribbing. That's worse.
Yes.
Then they're worried about you and they're sensitive around you.
Right.
You got to the NBA a couple years after college, 2011. I mean, we could talk for hours about the whole path and everything else. But when you got to the NBA, this is such a mom question, Gary, I'm sorry, but like, was the trainers, were they more supportive? I would imagine there's a substantial difference in the help that you'd get, but maybe not. Right back to our conversation. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Omnipod. It used to be that you would have to choose between an automated insulin delivery system and the freedom of a tubeless device. Now, with Omnipod 5, you can have the best of both worlds all in one. Omnipod 5 adapts with every pod change to meet your unique insulin needs and adjusts insulin using a customized target glucose, not a range. If you're ready to ditch the multiple daily injections or send your tubed pump packing, there's never been a better time. They'll even check your insurance coverage for you. Fill out the quick online form, see if you're eligible for a free trial. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Omnipod logo. For full safety risk information and free trial terms and conditions, visit omnipod.com/diabetesconnections.
In the NBA, you're kind of by yourself. I mean, the trainers in Denver did an amazing job. They were making sure I had my glucose levels were a certain number because the same thing that I did at UMass. The doctors and the medical staff and the trainers at the University of Massachusetts were amazing. They made sure that I was my best self every practice, every game, every workout. And in the NBA, you're grown up now. You're a man. You have to kind of fend for yourself. A lot of these guys have, children, families, and things like that. But they were definitely made sure that their investment, because, we are an investment, they're paying me for, to play basketball. They made sure that I had the right insulin or right medications. They made sure they had glucose tablets galore just in case anything happened. But I think they were helping me become an adult because I was on my own, living in Denver by myself. But yeah, I think they did a great job as best as they could. It wasn't no holding my hand and walking me through it because I was kind of experienced by this time, having, managing it for 3 or 4 years now and playing overseas with it, which was a total difference than managing here in America.
What was the biggest difference about that?
The food. I remember
Ah,
my first professional year was playing in Italy. I was playing in Naples, Italy. I remember taking the same amount of insulin that I would here in the United States. I was thinking around maybe 20 units of Lantus, 20 or 30 units of Lantus every day. And maybe I had a sliding scale of maybe 10 to 12 units of Humalog. And I would always go low during practice. And I was always wondering, wow, I'm eating pasta. I'm eating, let's say I'm drinking these juices. And obviously the food is different. The way they make the food, it's a lot of fresh foods and the carbs are different, not a lot of preservatives and all these different things. So that was an eye opener for me because I started to understand how food affects your body and what it can do to your blood sugar. So I was able to understand it better, understand myself better, and understand my body. And get into the NBA, it was kind of a cakewalk because now I had this experience, a real life experience of managing my diabetes in a different country. There's no team doctors, there's no team trainers that are worrying about that. You have to go to the hospital on your own. You have to go
wow.
do all that things on your own. And then you're dealing with the language barrier and all that stuff. So doing that, I think it made me, have a different perspective of managing my diabetes. And I think it helped. Obviously, there's many situations where people would probably have a fear of that and, those kind of experiences. But thankful to my dad and my family for always, having an optimistic mindset. I think that is my superpower is optimism and ignorance in a sense.
I get that. I get
But,
that. That's great. I've spoken many times on this show about my son playing a million sports and basketball being, in my opinion, the toughest for us to manage. Now, I think
mhm.
he was like 9 years old. And, 9-year-old kids are hard to manage anyway. They're so super active. They burn through everything so quickly. The little doses of insulin and glucose affect them in exaggerated ways. I mean, I remember thinking, how on earth is anybody playing this sport professionally with type 1 diabetes? So I know you can't really explain it. And I don't know. I mean, he also did wrestling in high school, which was challenging for other reasons because it's so hard to keep any of the gear on.
Yes.
And it's so sweaty and disgusting. Okay, so I'll give you kind of a layup here, no pun intended. Do you think that basketball is the hardest sport? Do you agree with me?
It's definitely difficult because there's so many things going on at the same time besides running up and down, jumping, you're, being physical as well. I do think it is a very fast-paced game and there's a lot that goes into, becoming a really good basketball player. And I just realized, I just realized it hit me. I want to say maybe 2 or 3 years ago, there's only been 3 players in the history of the NBA to play, and the NBA has been around for 80 years or so. There's been around 5,000, 5,200 players, and there's only been 3. And an even bigger stat, there's only one person of color and that's me. And that was really an eye-opening thing for me because I didn't see that as something that was so unreachable. I didn't look at it as like, oh, I have diabetes, I can't do this.
Yeah.
But numbers don't lie in a sense, and we could see how difficult it is to kind of make that benchmark.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to ask you about that because it is, as you said, so small numbers to make it. And not that there's so many professional athletes. When you look at other sports, more baseball players, more football players, things like that. I wonder, and we don't have to get all philosophical here, but some of that is because right around the time you were diagnosed, I think, and this is just anecdotally, I don't think there's been a lot of studies, doctors were just kind of starting to stop telling people they couldn't do anything with diabetes. I've talked to so many people diagnosed prior to, let's say, 2005, who were told, don't go back to college. You won't be able to finish. Don't play that sport. Don't move out of your parents' home when you're an adult. I'm really told, no, you can't do that. And that had just started to end, I think. And people are still told that, let's be honest. So when you talk to kids, like you just did at that event with Rob, like many of them and their families have been set up a little bit differently, but they still need this encouragement. Like, what do you tell them about playing professional sports?
So funny story, the day I still kind of get goosebumps, my hair stand up when I talk about this. I had my first, my Gary Forbes Foundation, that we had a softball event, Strikeout Diabetes. It was the second annual, I think, that we did. And one of the parents came up to me and she was like, Gary, thank you so much for everything you're doing. In my head, I'm just thinking, I'm just playing basketball. I'm just doing what I love and what I dreamt to do and what I care about. And she told me a story about her son, that it was after school. The dad came to pick him up from school, and he got in the car with his friend. And he was like, Dad, I want to try out for, I'm going to try out for basketball tomorrow. And his dad was like, no, you can't, son. You have diabetes and you can't. Luckily, his friend was in the car, and his friend was a basketball fan. He was like, Gary Forbes is in the NBA. He has diabetes. So that, I think that right there kind of put into perspective what my mission is, and, why I was given this platform, and being fortunate to have the dad and family that I have, and just the mindset of being able to overcome those challenges. Like you said, that I could have easily took what the doctor said and ran with that and been like, man, my dream is over. I can't make it to the NBA because I don't know anyone. I've never seen anyone that made it to the NBA with diabetes. The numbers at that time were there was only one, Chris Dudley at the time. So one in how many ever NBA players at the time, those numbers kind of seem like, all right, maybe he's right. Maybe I should just worry about my education.
I have more basketball questions, but let's talk about your books. Let's talk about Soul Survivors. How did this come to be? Where did you get the idea? Tell us about it.
So in 2017 is when I came up with the concept. I was getting towards the end of my basketball career. Now, mind you, I've had 6 knee surgeries, 2 major ones, which is really tough for, someone with diabetes to manage. The recovery the recovery time was a lot longer than, someone without type 1. So it was getting towards the end of my career, and I wanted to figure out, what's my purpose? Why am I here? Why was I given this platform? Why was I given this challenge? Is it just to, play in the NBA and then that's it? And, what am I going to do after? And I could have easily chose to become a coach, become a college coach, and do that whole grind of becoming a coach, or could have tried to coach in the NBA and things like that. But I didn't think that would have given me the same dopamine effect of, figuring out my why and my purpose. And they say dreams are just dreams, and, people don't go after their dreams and things like that. And I don't necessarily believe in that, but I figured that I wanted to become an idea. I wanted to leave, after I leave this earth, after I pass away, how many ever years from that it will be, I wanted people to look at my story or look at my experiences and be like, oh, just like the kid said, Gary Forbes can do it, so can I. So I wanted to take my experiences living and being around, going around the world, different places, different countries, and my experience of managing and overcoming type 1 diabetes and getting to, my dream with, being one of 3, one of one. And I wanted to showcase that I'm an introvert. A lot of people who know me, I'm very quiet, kind of laid back, but I wanted to tell my story in a different way. And I loved cartoons growing up. X-Men is one of my favorite cartoons. So I always tell people it's like a real life X-Men. It's kind of like a Marvel superheroes book series. And all of the characters have a certain health challenge, whether it be autism, type 1, type 2, leukemia, cerebral palsy. So I wanted to give every single childhood health challenge a superhero and a different, perspective, because I feel like great people have done great things with, managing their health challenge. So I wanted to change the narrative of what it is to manage these health challenges. And I wanted to create a inclusive world because I feel like there's an ignorance in the world of, we're all indirectly or directly affected by something. It's almost like the 6 degrees of separation thing where we all know someone either with autism or a friend or a parent who has an autistic child, or I always hear the story, oh, my grandfather or my cousin had diabetes or my cousin had leukemia or passed away.
Yeah.
So I wanted to create a different kind of conversation where we look at the people that go through this as superheroes. And I do think that, especially children, like I said, I was a hybrid. I don't know what it is to live with it as a child, which I'm sure both ways can be difficult. First year in college, managing it is definitely difficult, but I loved my childhood that I was able to not have those worries, especially on a parent, to have to, manage those days. And that's kind of more stressful probably for a parent than the child. But then when the child understands the severity of different things, that can also weigh on the child as well. So I wanted to give a sense of hope, change the narrative, remove kind of the stigma that's out there on different health challenges. And, I see Soul Survivors, this platform, as a helping hand to so many, because that's what it's kind of a play on words, soul being the only one, which I was always the only basketball player on the team with diabetes. No one ever, had it. So, and I know a lot of children in school, in life, feel like they're alone, they're by themselves. And, I wanted to change that.
That's great. I'd love to know just a couple of quick things about playing basketball with type 1. I know we've got parents listening or even some weekend warriors, who want to play and pick up a game here and there. And everyone is different. So I'm not asking you for advice for everybody else. But what worked for you? I get the impression that you never used an insulin pump when you were playing in the NBA.
Nope,
Okay.
nope, never did.
So you figured that out. Did you have a lot of low stuff around? Any advice or again, I don't want to ask for advice, but what worked for you?
I think just I had a target number that I was usually comfortable with. And in college, I used to have a kind of like a diary of, and this was following after my father, what I ate, what my glucose numbers were, what was it after. And, you kind of get in a routine of sense. And I was able to understand my body and what worked for me. And what worked for me was making sure that I was hydrated, making sure that I ate pasta before games to make sure that, that those carbs turn into energy for my activity that I was doing, and to always, have low snacks on deck all the time. And my favorite snacks at the time were peanut M&Ms. That was my
Nice.
go-to.
Those are great.
Yeah. Now it's changed a little bit. I'd use, dates and things like that as my go-tos, during snacks, and just having juice around. I was big on apple juice, and you kind of learn what affects your body. I'm not big on orange juice because it spikes my blood sugar so crazy. But apple juice for me, it, made sure I was leveled out. And, it's unfortunate sometimes. For me, it was trial and error, just learning my body and learning, how the sport affected me and what I was able to, deal with.
Yeah. We started this conversation off by talking about Rob and your connection to somebody that admired you when he was a kid. But I'm curious, it sounded to me, and again, I just heard that podcast episode, it sounded to me like, I don't know how to ask this, but did you have any kind of diabetes community when you were with the NBA other than people admiring you from afar? Yeah, it didn't sound like that.
I didn't. And it's like I just felt that I was just living, my life. I didn't realize how. I just went to the American Diabetes Association conference this past year in Orlando, and I did not know the community was that big. I was just amazed, and to see, what Rob has done and how he's created this platform, Diabetics Doing Things. I was inspired by that because I know that I have a story to tell. I know I have an impact on the world, and to see him being able to take this challenge of type 1 diabetes and turn it into something that people can talk about and get education and understand it more. I think it's so helpful because that would have helped me a lot more to just know that you have people supporting you who are going through the same battle and going through these same challenges. And for me to be an inspiration to him and for it to circle back and him be an inspiration to me, it says a lot about the power of people's experiences and how you can help.
Yeah. This is a Rob Howe appreciation podcast now, which is fine by me because I think he's great too. Did he talk you into any technology? Are you using anything new?
He talked me into a CGM, and we've had like multiple talks over and over and over again. He was saying, my argument to him was always, like, hey man, you go low with a CGM or a pump, what's the difference? I can just, check my finger, and it kind of gave me the impression of kind of like safety in a sense where I can understand better what my glucose number or what my glucose is doing, what my body's doing, how I react to it, how I react to certain foods, and not just go off, my experience and seeing how my body feels. Like, we're on our phone all day anyway. We use our phone. So this is something that can track where your numbers are going, how much time, you're in range and things like that. And the next phase now is to get on a pump because I'm still doing manually delivered injections. I'm still doing MDIs. He's trying to get me on the pump. I'm trying to search out different brands to see what's best for me and what can help me become a even better, managing diabetes.
Your father passed away just a couple of years ago, but he got to see you play in the NBA and follow those dreams, and Plan B or Plan Z or whatever it was worked out.
Yes.
Did you ever talk to him about his perspective on type 1? I mean, he was diagnosed at such a different time.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what that dynamic was like for the two of you.
We had one conversation when I was like much older, like during my time in the NBA, and he kind of was proud of me that I didn't listen to the doctors. Yeah, obviously he's proud that I listened to him, but he was just proud that I was able to use it as a springboard and not, use it as a crutch because, he's a big reader. He read, he's big on health and wellness and working out and things like that. And he was so proud that, I was able to accomplish my dream, which, he was always behind me, one of my biggest supporters. And I think the fact that, one of his sons also had this, health challenge and was able to accomplish his dreams, I think, made him feel accomplished. I think that was a really a cross off his bucket list things that, he had a son who was really successful at a sport and, made it to the pros. And to do that for not only for me, but for him and my entire family, I think that also gave me, crossing off, the bucket list, make my dad proud. And, that was one of my biggest supporters overall in health. I was someone who I can always call on to ask about, is this the right thing to take, or, how much should I eat, or questions about that.
Wow. Sounds like just an extraordinary guy.
Yeah,
That's
he was.
great. That's great.
That's a guy.
Well, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story. And we will link everything up to Soul Survivor and get the word out about the books coming out, the next series of them coming out for Diabetes Awareness
Volume 3 set to come out for Diabetes Awareness Month. The story of Dash and Dolly. So I'm excited about that. I actually have Dolly's shirt on right now.
Oh, nice. Very nice. I love it. Yeah, I'm a big X-Men fan too, so I'll definitely check it out. Very cool. Gary, thank you so much for joining me. I hope we talk again soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
More information about Gary and about the comic book, of course, about Soul Survivors. Just go over to diabetes-connections.com. and click on this episode. Each episode has its own homepage with information. I did that because, most of you listen on podcast apps, but it can be very difficult to get to the links sometimes, depending on where you're listening. If you're in a podcast app, you can usually just click like more or more info. They're all different. But if you have any trouble, head on over to diabetes-connections.com. I've got some really interesting tech episodes coming up this month. There's always new stuff. And I feel like this time of year, FDA approvals start coming in. Pivotal trials start getting announced. I don't know what it is about November, December. People may be clearing the books, but every year this happens. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking to companies that have really been on my list. I'm thrilled to talk to Luna. You're going to hear from them soon. We're talking to Quinn. You may not have heard of them, but you are going to. Quinn is a company focused on women's health in a way that I promise you haven't heard about anybody doing this because they are the first. Lots to come. So please stay tuned. And I was talking about podcast apps. If you're listening that way, just hit follow. I think it used to be subscribe on a lot of them. But if you're not already, definitely follow the show. You'll get the podcast delivered to you automatically. That is the best way to make it easy for you to never miss an episode. Thanks, as always, to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.
Benny has been using the Dexcom CGM for more than 10 years now. The first insertion was in 2013, just before he turned 9. It was great then. I mean, if you had done finger sticks for a while, you know how amazing it is to go from that to continuous glucose monitoring. But it's even better now. The Dexcom CGM systems just keep improving. They continue to get more and more accurate with no finger sticks or scanning required. The easy push-button insertion has made it easy for Benny to do it himself. He has done every one since we switched to the G6 in 2018, which was great for his independence back then as a younger teen. And of course, we still love the alerts and alarms and that we can set them how we want. Find out more, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. If your glucose alerts and readings from the G6 do not match symptoms or expectations, use a blood glucose meter to make diabetes treatment decisions.